So hey everyone, and welcome to Inspired Online. Usually you would see Shay Allie sitting right here, but this time it's me, Krish Surroy, and that's because I'm interviewing our beautiful founder and my sister, Shay Allie. Hey Shay, how are you?
Hello, doing good. How are you, Krish?
Doing absolutely fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So for those of you that don't know Shay, and I'm sure many of you do, I wanted to do this with Shay because Shay's just like an incredible person in the world. She is an author, she's a jazz singer, she's a comedian, she is latterly a sailor, but she's probably most well known for both being the founder of Inspired, also for being a top lawyer. And it's really that that aspect we're going to look at today as we speak to Shay. So Shay, you've been particularly involved in something that's dear to my heart, you know, that's the diversity inclusion movement, and particularly around equal pay. And for those that you don't know, Shay won a case for a client last year against BNP Paribas, the huge investment bank, which sparked off the hashtag #MeTooPay, and you know, has really kind of kicked off the equal pay kind of movement here. So Shay, do you want to tell us a little bit about that and kind of the journey kind of what happened there?
Yeah, I think let's start with all these things come through connection and the connections that you nurture throughout your life. So the suing BNP Paribas usually comes to people who have, you know, an amazing reputation in law. BNP Paribas were represented by QCs in all the litigation that I've done against them. But the original connection came from an old school friend.
Really?
Yeah, she had a friend of a friend of a friend that had a problem in BNP Paribas, and he came to me because my school friend couldn't deal with the issue, and she wasn't a courtroom lawyer, she was a solicitor. So she said, "Hey Shay, would you like to do this?" And I thought, yeah, okay, you know, I can do his case. So connection is so important because, you know, I wouldn't have got that work without, you know, nurturing those initial connections with my school friend. And not that I even did it for that reason. I think that's another key, you know, the non-attachment. We're friends because we're friends. We're not friends because, you know, I can get you work. And then, you know, and then it's about the connection and building the rapport with the client. So the client initially came to me and said, right, I'll pay your consultation fee for an initial consultation, but I want to see if we get on. I just want to see if you get it. I'm quite smart, you know, so when he met me in consultation, he was impressed because most people that he met did not understand trading. Now, I'm not a trader, but, you know, I was smart enough to keep up with his fast-paced mind. And, you know, and I don't feel like I did very much other than, you know, in Tony Robbins' language, understand and appreciate his world and connect. So that's one of the first steps that he talks about to make a change. So I guess even subconsciously, that's what I was doing. I was sitting there with a intention to just understand this person. And from that, I got hired to do that case. That case got written about in Bloomberg. And then that's how the subsequent case, Stacey Macken's case, got, she saw the article in Bloomberg and she thought, you've been successful against BNP Paribas before, let me hire you. So, you know, then it kind of just snowballs into...
The whole thing kind of rocketed, didn't it?
Yeah, it did indeed. And it came, I think, just from, you know, making those connections and building rapport, and you don't know what's going to come. And I think another beautiful story from this is, you know, about paying it forward. So the person that gave me that case, you know, wasn't on commission or anything, didn't necessarily benefit financially from me running the first BNP Paribas case or the second. But when I needed to hire a consultant in my firm to help me with all the new equal pay queries I'd been getting, and was, yeah, I couldn't manage that alone. And it's, you know, it's not my experience to manage things as a solicitor. So the first person that came to mind to help me and financially benefit from this additional work was the person who gave me the work in the first place. So there's a beautiful synchronicity. So I think there's
How
a real
amazing.
lesson there. Yeah, in terms of, be kind, and be open. And you never know where it could lead, but I think things often come full circle, and you'll be rewarded for that kindness that you gave.
Absolutely. And I think, your current law firm, Aly Hulme Law, as it were, I know when you first started it with your partner, you really kind of started it from this point of view of like conscious law, as it were, and bringing a very different approach to law. And that kind of really speaks to some of the things that you believe in and some things that you live, as it were. So what were some of the principles that you bring to how you practice law?
So Tom and I have known each other for a very long time. Again, it comes back to connection. I work with someone that I absolutely adore and I absolutely trust, and we've known each other, gosh, nearly about 20 years now. So when and I tell people that the consultant that we've hired, Rana, I've known since school, and people love that. They love that. You guys actually genuinely really like each other, care about each other, and you care about me. And so that was one of the fundamental principles that we wanted. People meet a lot of lawyers that are very scary, they think, and it's good to be scary in the courtroom. You need
absolutely,
that side of fire in you, but you don't want that fire to be, if you're the client, you don't want necessarily that fire to be directed to you. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm telling you off and you feel scared of me. I do want to be honest with you. But for me, it's always about pre-framing things in a way that makes someone understand, look, I'm on your side. Everything we're doing and everything I'm saying to you is for our common goal of getting you what you want. So I very much try and figure that out first. What is it that you want? And then I can work from that place. So once they're in a place where they trust me, and all of my clients obviously do, then we can have some difficult conversations, potentially, when difficult conversations are needed. So, when you give advice, it's not necessarily going to be what people want to hear. And one thing that I tell people a lot is, it's not about the money. I'm not going to be saying, right, do this because I make more money from it. Thankfully, I have a deep-seated belief that I'm very well taken care of, and I have an abundance of clients. I mean, these are, I think, beliefs that are good for everybody to nurture. So I don't need to chase work that's not going to be successful. So if someone is, I get this a lot with appeals, say, and someone thinks, well, this is really wrong and I want to appeal. And you've got to give them that difficult reality of, this is what I actually think the prospects of your appeal are. But if you still want to go for it, I'm happy to do that for you. But you must understand that, I think sometimes in life, things happen not because you need to pursue a closed door, and those resources that you have can maybe be spent in a better way than hiring me to fight that out anymore. So I'm not afraid to have those conversations either. And again, I think, people really appreciate that. And when you can have a conversation in that way, they do come to trust you even more. So I might have lost some pieces of work giving advice like that. And when I have, sometimes they'll come back and say, well, I've got another problem now. Can you look at this?
And I know you've had a lot of that, haven't you? Over the years, you've got a lot of client relationships where you've worked with them a number of times. I just kind of want to bring in some of the other stuff as well, because I think, as you know, I've got a law degree, so I know a lot of those kind of crusty lawyers out there. And what I know is sitting in a room in a consultation with you is not the same as sitting in a room in a consultation with a lot of other lawyers. And as you mentioned, you alluded to Tony Robbins earlier, and you have a very strong spiritual foundation as well, and kind of different modalities that you use. So tell us a little bit about some of those kind of things that you bring into your legal practice that kind of maybe make you a little bit different to some of those pale male or stale lawyers, shall we say?
Well, my dad had all the Power Talk tapes when I was growing up. So when I was about 15 years old, I'd seen some of Tony's infomercials, and I was like, oh, wow, Dad has these products. What is it that Dad's listening to? So I didn't actually tell my dad that I was doing this, but I'd take them into my bedroom and listen to them before I went to bed.
And how old were you at this stage?
About 15.
Wow, you had Robins getting into your world at 15. Wow.
Yeah, and I was pretty shy, but I knew I wanted to be a barrister. I mean, that came from a very deep-seated desire to, well, I wanted to be the one that knew how to stand up for people, and I wanted to be the one that knew what to say. And so at school, you get the experience of bullies, and, you know, when you get teased in the playground, I always used to think, yeah, I want to be that person that knows something really clever to say. And if someone doesn't know something really clever to say, I want to be able to help them. So that's where that desire came from. But I was quite shy. And I would say I would really credit Tony Robbins' work for getting me out of that. And I can't remember the exact question that it was, but it's something along the lines of, what's the worst that can really happen if I behaved in this way instead of this way? And so when I was about 16, I changed schools. I went briefly somewhere else to do my A-levels. And, you know, I thought to myself, well, how would it be if I just show up differently? I'm going to show up with someone I want to try this personality, someone that's confident, someone that's funny, someone that's, you know, can be life and soul. And so, you know, when I went to that school, and funnily enough, that's where I met the lady that's now our consultant. But that's the personality that I went in with. And I think, you know, part of that is really who I was, but too shy to show it originally.
So but there was a real acting as if, as it were, you're really kind of project, you know, living into a part of you that you hadn't inhabited before. Yeah.
And it would have been difficult to do at my old school because they already saw me a certain way. But, you know, a quirk of universe meant that I went back to my old school at some point and still showed up differently. Anyways, some of the things that I bring into my work, you know, there's lots of rapport building, for example. I see that as so key. And that's not something that they teach you at law school. You know, they teach you the law. They'll teach you how to be a good negotiator. They'll teach you how to be a good advocate, but how to connect with your client and make them feel comfortable, and just finding out what their world is and what they want, you know. Doing that is what gets me the work, you know. And then once I've got the work, I know how to do it. And then I would say, you know, there's about who you're being as well, and the amount of confidence that you can bring to a situation. So when I was doing my law degree, I knew I wanted to be a barrister. That was already in mind before I even went to university. And a lot of my friends wanted to be barristers as well. And my brain would literally delete anything that was negative about me making it in the profession. And I don't even know really how I did that, but I remember one lecture, for example, and this lecturer, Dr. Yates, used to go on about how difficult it was to get pupillage as a barrister and how difficult it is to make it in the profession. And genuinely, I can't quote him because I don't know what he said. You know, right.
I
was in that lecture daydreaming about, I don't know, something else completely. Right.
And, but I know your experience was definitely not that though, right?
No.
So tell us about your kind of pupillage and, you know, some placements, because some quite magical stuff happened, didn't it?
Yeah. So I was at second year university, and at the time I wanted to do media law because I was doing a lot of radio, and, you know, I loved writing, and my second choice degree would have been to be a journalist. So I thought, right, okay, well, media law makes sense. So I applied to this set of chambers. They're called Littleton Chambers. And among their list of specialties, it did say defamation, and that had been my highest mark in university. I thought, yes, I want to protect people's reputations. Let's do that. That'll be really exciting. And I went to Littleton, and Littleton actually did employment law, which they still do. They're one of the most renowned sets of chambers to do it. But I think that was really meant to be. I worked with someone during my work experience, and we really got on. Again, that art of connection, right? Yeah. And 2 years later, they wrote to me and said, would you like to apply for your pupillage here? Martin really liked you, and, you know, we'd very much encourage you to make this application. So I'd applied to about, I think, 5 or 6 sets of chambers, not too many. Of which Littleton was the most reputable and probably the most difficult to get into. And they had 2 spaces, around 200 applicants. I got one of them.
Wow.
Yeah. Without an Oxbridge degree, without a first, I got a 2-1 from University of London. So, you know, pretty good, but not what you would think would be, you know, the top choice for somewhere like that. But yeah, it just worked, you know.
And what? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, without really knowing I was doing it, I was almost living as if as well in that sense. Yeah. So I used to imagine my journey into Farringdon, and I didn't really even know I was doing it, but I was daydreaming almost, going, well, yeah, if I worked at Littleton, I'd be travelling into Farringdon. This is the walk that I'd have. I'd meet the love of my life at this lamppost outside Chambers, which that year was true.
That's what happened, isn't it?
That is exactly what happened.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And, you know, so, talking of intentions, and one thing I know about you, Shay, is generally speaking, if you set an intention, it comes true. I've known you long enough to know that happens. But one of the things you said earlier was you dreamed of being that barrister who stood up for people. And here you are, you know, if we fast forward to like today, you're kind of like, you're kind of leading this movement in like the equal pay movement. I know that you've been in, you know, the Financial Times, you've been in the Guardian, you know, you've been featured on BBC. You know, you have the reputation of being at the forefront of that. So, you know, that's something that's certainly come true. And I think, you know, one of the things I know is that part of it would be very easy for us to just focus on law today because, you know, you're right there. But I think one of the things that makes you stand out is that you are such a polymath, such a renaissance person, and a lot of your stuff is about who you are in the world. So I know you've written 2 books. You've written a book on love and a book on presence in the public. You're a jazz singer, and obviously you're the founder of Inspired. So that, which for me is about giving, you know, helping other people find their voice. So tell us, what was it that led you to start Inspired and kind of, you know, that journey, as it were?
Well, I think I'll start by saying this before we let go of the law is, you know, one of the most satisfying things is just helping people with things that are really up for them, you know. And I have conversations with people every day, and sometimes it's not really about, you know, what are the legal technicalities. Well, they think that's the frame, but, you know, giving them the space that you're okay, you're not this person that's that they're projecting onto you was really important. So, you know, when you take it to Inspired, one of the things obviously I'm passionate about is giving people a voice. Now, some people already have their own. So, you know, it's a platform to enable that. And one of my other beliefs is everything happens for a reason. So back in around 2007, I studied comedy, not for any particular reason other than it sounded like fun. So I did the course.
Which is very often something that you do, and it often leads on to other things.
If it's a yes, it's a yes, you know, and if you don't like it, don't do it anymore. It's pretty simple. These simple philosophies.
Right.
So at the time it was a yes, and some of the people on the course wanted to set up a club together. That was a yes. We ran it for a few years. It got well reviewed in Time Out, but it made no real sense, you know, to someone who thinks, okay, you're this barrister, and now you're doing this, that doesn't fit. But I found it fun, so I did it. And then from there, I ran a jazz club because now I was getting into jazz. And, you know, I thought, right, you know, I know how to run a really good night. I learned some lessons from that. I don't think that ran in quite the way that I would want it to. But having that experience then made sense, because personal development, which was the thing that made me and the thing that was really close to my heart, now was something, you know, I could take this experience of running events and apply to an event that was, you know, for something that was one of my passions. So, and it started from a real space of fun as well. I would say, you know, when I started it, I didn't think, and, you know, I do believe you should have a vision, but I didn't start it from a place of thinking, right, we're going to run in 8 or 9 cities, you know, and this is going to be running for years and years and years. But, you know, I was like, let's inspire the people around us. There are some people that have never had exposure to personal development. There are some people that will never go to a Tony Robbins event or a John Gray's event or whatever. You know, how can I make it really safe for someone to think, yeah, I would come to that? So we took it into a bar in Mayfair. The talks were 10 minutes. One of my favorite things about 10 minutes is something I heard from a Catholic priest of all people. And he said, a speech should be like a miniskirt. It should be long enough to cover all the important bits and short enough to still be interesting.
I love that. That's absolutely brilliant.
So bless him, some, you know, father, whoever in Dublin, you inspired me. He said that at a wedding.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought, you know, that's a really good philosophy, because, you know, once you have an event that's not, you know, pressured into, I need to change my life. It's just listening to someone for 10 minutes. And if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If you love them, you can find out more. And if you don't love them, you've only listened to them for 10 minutes. But we very much frame the night to help, you know, or to encourage people, just listen from a space of open-mindedness, love, connection, and, you know, nothing is scripted. So they're really sharing from their heart. And the fact that they do that, and they do that in that way, I think encourages a real openness in the audience as well. So we've had some quite magical stories about things that have happened from an audience point of view and the connections that have been made there.
Yeah, and one of the things I love in an Inspired Night is you have this wildcard slot, which you really encourage people who have never spoken before to like stand up and share. And I know there's been some magic that's come out of that. So, you know, tell us a little bit about that piece of magic.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lady that worked as a dominatrix. She was one of the highest paid dominatrixes, if that's the right term, in the world. But she'd never had the confidence to tell her parents that that's what she did for a living. So she took the wildcard slot. She was incredible. She talked about how, you know, the masks that people wear in life. And doing that talk gave her the courage for the first time in years to go back home and tell the truth to her parents, which I just thought was beautiful, you know. She doesn't do that anymore. But, you know, at the time that felt really significant. And it was the first step, I think, to healing that relationship with them that she had. We've had people from the wildcard slot go on to actually do a lot of speaking gigs. Someone wrote a best-selling book and had never spoken before, you know, came and just did that slot. And some people have just really touched people's hearts. I remember this other man who was from Miami, and he actually stayed, or he changed his flight so that he could come to Inspired before he went home. Wow. So we gave him the wildcard slot, and that story was just incredible. He talked about the death of his soulmate, and what that meant to him.
Wow.
And, you know, how he could, or how he was still like feeling, you know, these feelings of love despite her not physically being here anymore. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the house that night.
I bet. I bet.
Mm.
So, if someone was coming to inspire them, one of the things about you, Shay, is your presence in the world. And you know, I guess being a barrister, you have no problem standing up and speaking and all that kind of stuff. But I know, kind of like, I know your second book, for example, How to Be Captivating, is all about having presence in the world, as it were. So, if someone was like standing up, doing the wildcard slot, or indeed, you know, just wanting to be more of who they are in the world. You know, what kind of, you know, if there were 2 or 3 tips you were going to give them on, you know, how to be more of that authentic presence in the world, what would you say?
Well, the first is, I think, very simple, but it's that piece of advice from Fritz Perls, which is quoted by Gay Hendricks quite a lot. And it's the difference between fear and excitement is the breath. And it's the same chemical reaction in your body. So if someone is about to take the stage and they get really nervous, and this happens, well, more than you'd think, and I need something very fast, I'll just ask them to take a breath, because that changes your state immediately. So that, you know, good deep breath.
No kidding. Yeah.
You know, so that's thing number 1. Very quick, very easy to do. Thing number 2, it's probably my favorite personal development tip of all time, is what is the actor strategy? And lots of people talk about it. You know, if you don't have the muscle of behaving how you want to behave, emulate someone that does. So I often use the example of Ella Fitzgerald. You know, if I'm going to go up and sing one of her songs, Ella does not care that I've decided to borrow her confidence that day. In fact, she probably loves the fact that someone is still singing her stuff. So, you know, but I think one of the problems that people might perceive in that, even though I believe that emulating someone who's already mastered that is amazing, because it helps you build your own muscles. One of the problems in that is some people think, well, but that's not really me. So my version of that is, when you feel that you can, think about who is the highest and best version of yourself. And in my words, the version of you that God meant you to be in this world. Because all of us have a vision of that. You might not have ever thought about it. You might not have ever tapped into it. But if you close your eyes and imagine, you know, the brightest, the cleverest, the shiniest, you know, the healthiest, vibrant, most looking version, there is a version in there.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then, you know, it's like, well, some people find it helpful to name that presence something else. You can name it whatever you like, doesn't matter.
Do you have a name for your presence?
I do. I was scared that you'd ask me that, because I don't often admit it. But yeah, mine's called Ronnie, and it's I don't know why, but you know, this does sound a bit sort of woo-woo, so I'm so sorry to those that are not into that. But you know, the first time I tuned into that presence, I just asked the presence the question, what's your name? And the presence said to me, Ronnie. And I thought, okay, I don't want to argue with you, that's what I'm going to go with.
Hey, nothing wrong with a bit of intuition.
No, exactly. So you know, when I think, or when I have those moments, I was like, okay, what would Ronnie do? And I immediately go back to the vision, because the first time that I visualized her, you know, she was on top of in a field on the top of a mountain. She's total freedom, very confident, very fearless. So I can immediately go back to the vision and embody that. And so that's what I would do if I got nervous. So I'd invite everybody to connect into that piece of themselves, name that piece, even if the name sounds silly to you, it's not wrong. You know, it just is what it is. No one else needs to know what their name is either. So, you know, some people have named theirs Power or whatever, you know, it is. and then bring that version of yourself.
Yeah, you can almost see that as almost like a, you know, in psychological terms, like a reframe or an
Mm,
anchor or some of those NLP kind of things. But whether you kind of
mm,
see it from an intuitive or a, you know, a psychological perspective, I really get the physiological impact that can have.
mm.
So, so I love that.
Really.
So you said that was tip number two. If there was a third thing you were going to give people, what would that be?
Know what you want, for sure.
Ah, so the power
Yeah.
of intention.
Yeah. And then nurture that intention. It's no good you one day thinking, okay, I've meditated once in my life and that's it. You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You've got to keep, but you what do you want? And that inquiry is the seed, right? But
Yeah.
your seed's not going to grow by itself. You need to plant the seed and you need to water it. And the more you water it, it's going to grow. Okay. So, you know, my modality of choice is I start the day with meditation, a spiritual practice, and I do I do some Robbins priming because I love what he does with the priming, which is gratitude and actually visualizing your
Hmm.
intentions. And I do that every morning without fail in my life, you
Yeah.
know. And then at night I also have practices that I do at night. So sometimes I will do some sort of spiritual practice at night, but I will change the meditations that I do. And I use a thing called Mind Movie, where it's
Hmm.
just, again, a collection of words and images that you want to have happen in your life. And it's okay to change those. I think, you know, it's amazing how it works. And, you know, there's a real science behind it, which I'm not going to go into right now. But connecting with those and then watching your life kind of unfold before your eyes as they change. You know, so you are going to have to upgrade those, and it's fine to upgrade
Mm,
those, you
mm,
know,
mm, mm. Absolutely, absolutely.
because we're
I
always
think,
evolving.
yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, just a couple more questions I want to ask you, but you know, one of the things I'm observing here, and I think it's even though I've known you a long time, one of the things that I'm really getting from this is a big part of this is just the fact that you say yes to life a lot. And
Yeah.
as you said earlier, and there are lots of things you've got involved in. So in the last couple of years, you've kind of qualified as a fitness instructor. You
Hmm.
have completely blown my mind by qualifying as a sailor, which I never thought would happen.
I've
And,
got a competent crew qualification. Yes.
absolutely, and I believe you're studying for the day skipper as well, right?
I am, yeah. That's
So,
that's a study, but I haven't achieved day skipper yet, but I
no,
will at some point.
but as a
But you know
result of
what,
that,
even that is attached to intention.
of course it is, and a big part of that was, of course, you went sailing around the British Virgin Islands
Yeah,
with the kind of Virgin Foundation and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
So,
that was
so,
wonderful.
quite, and that's obviously the background you have with you right now. So,
Mm.
what's next for Shay Allie? Because you know there is this kind of this amazing world that seems to unfold for you by saying yes. So, what's next?
I think you know the answer to that. You know, so I think it's no, how can I say this? It's got some quite personal intentions, really. But I think I'm coming into a phase where, you know, not that I haven't taken care of myself, but I want to take care of myself in a different way. So I've spent a long time kind of traveling around the world and doing, you know, things that involve kind of being in the public eye and being outside. And you know, that's been really lovely. And I think that I will obviously do more of that, and I'd love to, but I also want to dedicate some time to family and nurturing that side as well.
Absolutely. So I know there are kind of things around kind of growing the firm so that becomes more self-reliant.
Hmm.
There's a lot of allowing coming, isn't there? You know,
Yeah,
allowing inspired to carry on expanding. You know, it's in,
yeah.
would you say 8 or 9 cities right now? And
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've had to close all our live events for now,
of
but
course, obviously,
there
but
was
hopefully in the future.
hopefully in the future. There were 6 cities running. There were 2 imminently starting and one that will happen when the time is right. So there's 9. If anyone wants to apply as a host, obviously they're more than welcome to. But yeah, I think, and again, we'll use the Robbins example. He started in this way as well. He was doing a lot of stuff personally when he first started, and continued to do so for many years, which is what I've been doing. I've been running Inspired personally as well. But now I think it's also about nurturing like a next generation of people to be able to take that over. So obviously I'm not going to travel to all our cities every month to host it myself. I've had other people do that. And what's beautiful is they bring their own energy and their own vibe to the event, so they can learn from my experience, but they are still them. So for example, our lady in Tallinn comes to us from a creative background, lovely Mary there. And because Mary comes from that background, she's taken the Tallinn event to a beautiful jazz club out there. A lot of the people that she gets are creatives and from the creative industries. And that's the vibe of that event. Whereas in Brussels, our lovely Chiller, works for the European Parliament. So a lot of the speakers we had there, were from Parliament, or, were from connections that she had. Or Sume's a coach in Amsterdam, so she'll get those connections, similar to Sam in Birmingham. Our other cities, by the way, were Essex, and we were going to start in Ibiza and Minnesota, but each event has its own energy and presence in that way.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
And then I think, in terms of the firm, it's about leveraging as well. So, I have a reputation in equal pay, but if I delivered everything personally, I'd burn myself out as well. So, I've got my wonderful business partner, we've got amazing paralegal support, we've got our lovely consultant, so I think you need to be okay with, if you want to grow, delegate some things, and know that people have their own style, and that's also okay.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So last but not least, Shay, if people want to find you online or in the world, where do they find you?
So our firm website is aha-law.co.uk. It stands for Aly Hulme Associates, but we quite like that it became AHA.
AHA, yeah.
Yeah. And then if you want to find Inspired, it's inspiredstage.com. I also have shayallie.com, which lists all my pursuits. So you can find me on any of those sources, and I'd be happy to connect and help.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your light and your brilliance today, Shay. It's been a fascinating view into the life of not only a top lawyer, but a wonderful human being and someone who makes a real difference on this planet. That, I think, is what shines through for me, that you make a real difference to a lot of people's lives, and I'm personally very grateful for that. So there you go, inspired viewers. That is your founder, Shay Allie. Thank you so much for today, Shay.
Thank you, Krish. This fabulous human being as well.
Thank you. And inspired folks, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.